Hey guys, how's it going? Barbarian here. In this video I'm going to show you how I build my Barbarian for solo and group play. And I know you guys have probably seen my specs and seen me use them, but I want to show you guys the reasoning behind them, and perhaps you'll learn how certain skills work in ways that you haven't thought of before. So let's get started. So first of all, as you've seen, my primary skill for damage is typically Frenzy. I use Frenzy with Sidearm. The reason I use Frenzy with Sidearm is because Frenzy has a high life on hit modifier, and because it's hasted by 75%, it has a very good life per second based on life per hit gained from using the ability. There are other abilities that I use, but primarily I use Sidearm. You can use Bash with Clobber if you're leveling up and you're doing bosses in Normal and Nightmare. However, bosses in Hell and Inferno are actually immune to proc stun, so you have to keep that in mind, because in those situations, I don't think you would want that ability. Also, Bash with Onslaught is a very good ability compared to Frenzy. If you're talking about life on hit, the modifier for Onslaught is 100% of your life on hit if you count the 2 extra hits. The reason you would use Bash is because this ability with Onslaught, it does a lot of extra damage per hit. Obviously, if you can get 5 stacks of haste from Frenzy, it will be better. But in situations, in certain bosses, or on certain special or champion packs, you can use Bash. So, because you've seen me use Sidearm for the most part, because of a life on hit benefit, let's just go with that for now. Now, for my right click, I like to have my Get Out of a Surround ability. And I like to have it on my right click because I feel I have very good control over the mouse when it is on my right click. Now there are 2 options. The first option is Leap, and the second option is Charge. You've seen me use Charge for the most part lately, but Leap also has its benefits. So when I do Leap, I sometimes use Iron Impact. Iron Impact quadruples your armor for 4 seconds, and remember, it's a 10-second cooldown. So this is an immense defensive cooldown. At the same time, it provides you added mobility when you need it. Also, you have Death from Above. Death from Above is the other rune that I use. I use it if I need a stun. For instance, when I'm doing Inferno Diablo, I really want to have a stun, either for the lightning or for another cast, for the black stuff on the ground. I really want a stun, but because I also want mobility, I don't want to choose Leap with Iron Impact and then also get Ground Stomp. I want to have other skills. So I'm going to get Leap with Stun, so I can have a 2-in-1 ability. So I can use it in 2 different ways, and it only eats up 1 skill slot. Now when I'm getting Charge, I always get Dreadnought. Dreadnought heals you for 8% of your life for each target that you hit with your Charge, which is a lot. The benefits of this is, when you're solo, if you're high level like me and you got good gear, you're going to have 40, 50, 60, maybe 70k life. Using a health pot for like 12k, that doesn't do anything. Using like a Templar, 5k heals, are you kidding? You need percent of your life based healing. And sometimes Revenge doesn't proc when you need it to. And that's why I really like using Dreadnought for solo play. Because every now and then, either the revenges are not happening, or you've been running away from mobs and whatnot, and you need your health pool up ASAP. There are a few issues and a few benefits with this ability. Furious Charge, when you leap, it'll leap. You can't really screw up a leap, but a Furious Charge can screw up quite a lot. Like if you're surrounded, certain mobs, you actually can't charge through them. So you can't get out of a surround in every case with Furious Charge. There are a few other issues as well. Sometimes there's some uneven ground terrain, like there could be a pile of bones or something like that. You could charge into that and actually stop your charge early, and you could still be surrounded. And there's also certain things on certain maps, like if you're against the wall and the wall's like bumpy or something, sometimes it just won't work. It's not 100% of the time, and you have to keep that in mind. Like if you're playing hardcore and you want to get out of that bad spot 100% of the time, you should probably use Leap, even though it doesn't heal you like Furious Charge does. However, there is also a benefit to Furious Charge that doesn't really exist with Leap, and that is against frozen champion packs. So when the frozen little globules pop, you can actually charge through them, because when you're charged, you're actually immune to CC. And you can also charge when you're jailed. It won't break the jail effect, but if you're jailed and you're on top of a Desecrate, you can charge out of it, so you're not in the Desecrate. So it has some added utility and some utility taken away from the ability based on the situation. But all in all, I think it's slightly better than Leap. At least it is on softcore, because if you screw up a Furious Charge and die, I mean, no big deal. On hardcore, Leap is probably a little bit more attractive, but we'll see. So for this spec, we'll just go with Dreadnought. Now for the primary ability, for a long time I actually used Ground Stomp with Wrenching Smash because I felt that I just stun the mobs and then attack them, and then I could do it that way. But a lot of the hard mobs in the game, a lot of the champion packs, the stuns don't last very long on them, and the pull-in effect actually doesn't work on champion and special mobs. So because of that, I actually dropped stun, and I learned about this ability, Wrath of the Berserker. If you're getting Wrath of the Berserker, you pretty much have to get Insanity. Insanity is a no-brainer. Let me just show you guys what Wrath of the Berserker does, because when you look at the ability, it doesn't look like it's actually very good. There are a lot of effects that are not given in the description, however. So if you're frozen, let's say you're frozen on top of like 3 stacks of Desecrate, you think you're dead. Well, Wrath of the Berserker actually is a CC break, and you can use it when you're CC. So if you're frozen and you know you're going to die, you can actually pop Wrath of the Berserker, so you unfreeze yourself instantly, and for the full duration of 15 seconds, you're actually immune to CC as well. So it's amazing. I usually use Wrath of Berserker against champion packs that are nightmarish, or champion packs that are frozen if I'm in a really bad spot, and many other cases. So there's the defensive benefit. There's also the offensive benefit. See, Wrath of Berserker with Insanity doubles your damage, and you also attack faster, and you also move faster, and your crit chance is increased. All those things account for much, much more damage during a small period of time. So what I would do is I would, run through the game, and when I'd find a champion pack, I would kill it using Wrath of the Berserker. Almost in every case. Some champion packs, they have just straight up dead easy affixes, so there's no point to using it in that case. But in most, it's a very good way to deal with the game, because I build the Barb defensively. I can't kill champion packs that quickly, but with this ability, I can save it for the difficult ones and get through the game much more quickly than I would otherwise. So that's what we're going to go with Insanity. Now this next skill, I'll leave it blank because this is a skill I usually toy around with a lot based on what I'm doing. But the next super cookie cutter ability, right here, Revenge, Provocation, no explanation required. I mean, Revenge is pretty much your bread and butter on a Barb. It's pretty much your top damage and your top healing ability, and Provocation doubles the frequency. I don't think there's any other reason to get any other rune for Revenge. I mean, that's just a clear one. The last cookie cutter ability, you probably guessed it. It's fucking Warcry, no problem. Now, Warcry, most Barbs go with Impunity, which ups their resistance by 50%, but there's a little bit more to it than that. Based on your group setting, based on your current level of gear, you can actually get use out of most of the other runes. So if you have a lot of armor and no resistances, and you actually have some way to heal yourself, you can use Hardened Wrath. Hardened Wrath may actually be better than Impunity for your Barb. It's unlikely if you're like an Inferno, but it can be. Also, Invigorate is very good. Invigorate increases the maximum life by 20% and regenerates 310 life per second while affected by Warcry. It doesn't seem by the wording that would affect your group, but it does. So it increases the life of everyone in your party who's affected by Warcry by 10% and gives them a passive regen. So this is really good because, for instance, when I was playing hardcore with my Witch Doctor friend, while we were leveling up, we had no regen. So to avoid getting whittled down by crummy mobs the whole way through the game, I actually used this ability and found it to be very good. Also, we have Veteran's Warning, 15% dodge chance. I mean, this looks pretty bad if you're just not very imaginative, but we found it very useful if you're grouping with glass cannon style builds. So let's say you got like 2 Witch Doctors in your group, right? The Witch Doctors they're both built as glass cannon. They have no life, but they have a cheat death ability. So giving them more armor or more resist doesn't mean anything to them. They're still going to get one shot. What you want to give them is abilities that prevent damage, like dodge. So, for instance, if someone's going to hit them for 100,000, they have like 20k life, 20% more armor won't do it. 50% more resist won't do it. But 15% more dodge, sometimes will do it. They may dodge that attack and save their cheat death for another attack. Or once that cheat death is procced, maybe it'll save them again then. So there's a lot of use based on your group composition with this ability. And otherwise, for most solo play and for most group play, of course, you would use Impunity for the 50% bonus to resist, which also affects every party member affected by Warcry. Very, very strong ability. Before I get to this last ability, I want to discuss passives. For passives, if you're in Inferno, especially in the later acts, you'll know that Superstition is absolutely mandatory. I mean, when I'm in Act 3 and 4 Inferno solo on my Barb, I can take the damage of the melee hits. What I can't take damage from is like Arcane Enchant, Molten, that kind of stuff just destroys me. So I absolutely need the magic damage mitigation, and I feel this ability is really where it's at in terms of defense. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. The next one, I typically go with Nerves of Steel. For me, Nerves of Steel almost always gives me more armor than Tough as Nails, but in some situations, Tough as Nails can be better for your Barb. If you have medium level of vitality and a lot of bonus armor on your items, Tough as Nails may actually be better. So have a look, try it out, and I would rank that as a second in priority. And I'll leave this one blank just for a second now, because the last passive slot is tied into my last skill slot most of the time. So when I'm doing Act 1 Inferno or Act 2 Inferno, the mobs are pretty easy for me. I don't have to stack all that defense. What I can do is I can stack some damage. So what damage do I get? I want to get a Fury Spender, but I don't want to get something like Hammer the Ancients. I want to get, where is it here? Earthquake. That's what I want. I want Earthquake with Mountain's Call, and when I get Earthquake with Mountain's Call, I want Brawler. So let me explain how this works. Earthquake just does a lot of AoE damage, but it's got a 2-minute cooldown. 2,000% damage sounds like a lot. But what's even more is, it stacks with all the other damaging effects. So if you pop Rather Berserker Insanity, it's essentially more than doubling your damage. On top of that, if you're surrounded, you got Brawler plus 30% damage. Then you drop an Earthquake. I mean, then we're talking some serious damage. 2,000% double is 4,000 plus 30%. I mean, you're looking at like 5,000-ish% damage here. AoE. I mean, you just level the pack. That's how I play the game. I run through all the mobs that I don't have to kill. I find a champion pack, and I just blow it the hell up. And it works pretty well for me. I use this spec you see right here for Act 1. For Act 2, I switch out Brawler for the second defensive ability with Tough as Nails. And that's enough for me to survive Act 2. For you, it may not be, because, maybe I have better gear than you. We'll see. But for Acts 3 and 4, I can't use Earthquake. I need more defense than this. This is not enough for me to survive Acts 3 and 4. And what I do is, some people get Shield Wall. I think Shield Wall is not very good, but it can be good in some situations. So some people who get Shield, they get Ironhide, or they get Ignorance's Bliss to get some life back. Personally, I feel if you want a defensive cooldown, you should get Leap with Iron Impact, because quadrupling your armor is more than 65% damage reduction. And, Ignore Planes for 5 seconds, maybe Rune to 7, but still, the cooldown is 30 seconds. Leap, the cooldown is 10 seconds, and Iron Impact lasts for 4. That's amazing. Even still, I typically don't use Leap. What I use is Threatening Shout. Now, what Threatening Shout does is it's an AoE debuff, and it drops their damage by 20% for the full duration of the debuff. And the cooldown is also the duration of the debuff. So the cooldown kind of makes it a little bit of an annoying ability, but it's still really good. Now, the first time I was looking at these runes, the potential was for Threatening Shout, I was not so impressed. I'm like, 30% snare? Like 30% in Diablo 3 is like nothing for a snare. The next one, attack speed reduced by 15%. It's like, oh, for 5 seconds, the cooldown's 15. That thing sucks. Alright, and then we had Grim Harvest for more loot. More loot is fine, but I mean, if you want to just get more loot, you just get Earthquake. You just kill easier mobs. You just kill them faster with Earthquake. So that didn't make much sense to me either. Then Demoralize, taunting them. If you're solo, what's the point of taunting the mobs? I don't understand. So then Terrify, fearing. Like, don't you want the mobs to be all on you? I don't understand. Like, these things look really bad to me. But after I played around with them, I actually found some of them to be quite good. So the first one, Intimidate, snaring for 30%. It looks bad, I admit, but it's actually really good. You can use it defensively, like if you have a lot of mobs on you, you pop Threatening Shout, you're in there, you're revenge spamming, you're frenzying up, you're Wrath of Berserker. If your life is going down, you can actually get out of there pretty easily because the mobs are snared. They're not snared for a lot, but they're snared for something, and that something's going to save you from several melee attacks. So typically, I actually use this rune in Inferno for Act 3 and 4. And also, when you have mobs that are trying to run away from you, you can snare them as well. It doesn't work as well, but it does help you get a few more hits than you would otherwise. Falter is still pretty bad in my opinion. Grim Harvest, yeah, if you're farming like goblins or something, sure. But Demoralize. Demoralize is an amazing rune as well. So, like I said, originally, I thought it was worthless. Like, why would you want to taunt mobs when you're the only player there? Well, let me tell you why. When you taunt mobs in this game, they're actually forced to melee you, regardless of what mob it is. So if you run into like a caster, or let's say those dragon things in Act 3 that just run away from you and fireball, those things are so annoying, right? Well, with this ability, if you get in range for a threatening shout, you can pop it on them with Demoralize, and they'll actually come to you and try to melee you while you smash their faces in. So, damn, that's pretty awesome. If you run into a lot of mobs that are constantly running away from you and you find that really annoying, I urge you to try Demoralize. I think it's a very good ability, but it's more offensive than defensive. So if you can spare the defense, then go for it. But if you can't spare the defense, the most defensive threatening shout version I think is Intimidate. So give that one a try. I think that's the way to go. And this right here, with all defensive passives, essentially is my Act 3 and 4 Inferno solo spec. It works pretty well. I can pretty much clear the game with this spec almost without dying at all in one game, and it's been working pretty good for me. Now, when you're in a group, there's a few things that you need to change. You have to keep in mind that when you're grouping for Inferno, the mobs do significantly more damage, and that can be a real problem. Because of that, you essentially want to focus on CC, and this is the kind of build that I use for group play. Instead of Furious Charge, I get Leap. I get Leap for the armor buff. And because I get Leap for the armor buff, I want to use that with the taunt. And instead of Wrath of Berserker, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, I'll get my Ground Stomp again for Wrenching Smash. Because if I'm Wrath of Berserker, the mobs can still be hitting my fellow party members, but if they're stunned, they won't be hitting anything. And also for Frenzy, I usually replace it with Cleave. If the mobs are really easy, I'd get Broad Sweep. If they're a little bit challenging for the other party members, probably the ranged, I would get Gather the Storm, which snares them for 80%. This snare is not very effective against champions, but it is still something. It may save them sometimes, because when you're in a group as a tank spec Barb, the other guys are going to do significantly more damage than you are. So you don't have to worry about doing a little more damage in most cases. Now, the way this spec works is very simple. You run into a pack of mobs, you drop a Ground Stomp on them, and they're stunned for 4 seconds. Now, they're actually out of combat for a little bit more than 4 seconds because they begin their attack afterwards, and because they're closest to you, they'll probably attack you to begin with. So what I do is I do Ground Stomp, and then I wait for it to expire, and I wait maybe like half a second more, and then I drop a Leap, and then I taunt them all. So you're like, why don't you just taunt them all? Well, when you're in a 4-player game in Act 3 and 4, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. You cannot just taunt all the mobs on you. You will get killed instantly. So what you have to do is you have to quadruple your armor for 4 seconds, and then during the 4 seconds, taunt them. So that's how it works. You got the Ground Stomp, which is about 5.5 seconds of CC. Then you got Leap Taunt, which is another 3, plus another like maybe 1.5 seconds before the mobs actually do anything. That's about 10, maybe 9 to 10 seconds, let's be fair. And then you only have 3 seconds left until Ground Stomp is up again. Ground Stomp is 12-second cooldown. So if you coordinate with your group, it doesn't take much. All it takes is maybe another Frost Nova, maybe a Blind, and you can do Ground Stomp to Leap Threatening Shout to something else, back to a Ground Stomp. And you're looking at CC for almost like 18 seconds. And that's, in my experience, more time than it's required to kill just standard mobs in the game. So I feel this spec works really, really well for a group playing Inferno. Again, guys, I hope you guys learned something. This is the way I play my Barb. I know a lot of you play much more offensively than I do, and play in different circumstances. So hopefully at least I've introduced you to how certain abilities work maybe a little bit differently than you thought, and maybe you can improve your spec a little bit knowing that information. Have fun, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.